The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position of ONTV's management, staff, or board of directors. The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Collection Reflection. I am your host, Tim Williams, and joining us this week, filling in for Kristen, is the producer and director of Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi, the Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi television show, and the award-winning Pure Brews America, none other than Denver Rochon. How are you today, Denver?
Hey, good. Thanks, Tim, for having me. Appreciate it. I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to talking some comics and other fun stuff.
Well, thank you for coming on. That's right. You are the producer and the director of both of those
Yeah,
shows?
I do more of the directing just
Okay.
because, that's more my preference, the shooting and the editing.
Okay.
Producing, that's for me, that's not quite as much fun. That's more the behind the scenes,
Right.
lining everything up. So, I do some producing, but yeah, I'm more of the hands-on kind of a guy. So,
Okay. What is the status of those shows? Is Pure Brews
well,
America still
yes,
on?
no, sadly, Pure Brews has gone away.
Okay.
We would love to do more and bring it back. It's just, we kind of ran out of
Okay.
sponsorship
Oh.
funds and money. So,
But I have heard rumblings about possibly Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi returning.
yes,
Is
we
it-
are actually shooting right now.
Okay, great.
We've got some new stuff lined up. We're starting a cooking segment with Q, who I
Oh,
believe
okay.
has been on the show, right? Or is
He-
that the wrestling
He's
show?
not been on this show.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we've been shooting for that. So we're kind of working on a quarantine COVID episode, and
Okay.
then now that things have been kind of lifted, we'll kind of get back into the groove. And Motor City Comic Con's coming back, so we'll be
Yeah.
there for that. And
Yeah.
as more Comic Cons start popping back up, we'll be out there shooting and talking to the artists and the guests and
All right.
all that fun stuff.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that'll be great when that show returns. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with this show, but we do a little segment called What You Got. And if you'd like me to go first, I'll go first, or you can go first.
Well, I brought
Whatever.
a few
It's,
things. I can go first.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what would be the best thing.
Well, whatever you got.
My most recent, let me pull it out of there. My most recent purchase, if you will, are a couple of old Simpsons watches. I'm a big
okay.
Simpsons fan, and a friend of mine
Here, I'll
works.
show them on my camera because I don't know how well this show up.
A friend of mine works
Otherwise.
estate sales. So she found those for me. She knows I'm a big Simpsons guy.
So,
You know-
like, what year do you think these are from?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's see. There is a box, and this says 2002. These were Burger King exclusives.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And if you push the top button on the side, they have little sound clips.
They still work. I don't know how well that's coming across there.
I can hear.
Okay.
And then that
This
one.
one. What are they saying? Don't say
Are
it.
we there yet?
Oh, are we there?
yet?
Oh, okay.
And
Cool.
so the batteries that were in them did not, well, they sort of worked. And so when you pushed it, it was like, sounded like a nightmare scape. It was like,
Oh, okay.
So we put in fresh batteries and they look like they've never been used before. And there's
Really?
actually two more in the set. There's
Okay.
a Bart watch and a Krusty watch. So she's on the lookout for those as well. So that will kind of complete the
All right.
the set of four. I'm not a big watch
cool.
person
Mm-hmm.
myself. I don't really wear any jewelry, well, except for my
Yeah, I don't need
wedding ring. But I love Simpsons stuff. I don't have like a huge Simpsons collection.
Okay.
But when I see things, you know, like I've got a pair of floor mats for my car that my wife got me like 20 years ago. So
all right.
they just keep moving from car to car. And, you know, I've got action figures and video game, you know, a little bit of everything. But I wouldn't say it's an impressive collection. But if I see some Simpsons stuff that's kind of cool and different, you know, I'll pick it up. So,
All right.
so what you got?
So that's it. You don't
Well, I
want
mean,
to show us
I have some other things, but I wasn't sure how much time you wanted to.
Show us one more.
Okay, so I've got.
Because mine's not going to be very long.
Okay. All right. So during the quarantine, I, like everyone else, was stuck at home for quite a long time, and video games kind of got me through it. I played video games ever since I was a little kid, you know, back in the Atari 2600 days. And, you know, there's times where I kind of fall in and out of it. In the last few years, because I have 2 young kids, it's been all Minecraft and Roblox and Lego video games. So over the past year or so, I've been kind of getting back into the retro gaming. And over the quarantine, I was doing like daily live streams of, started with Sega Genesis. They have this mini system.
Oh, well, you had mentioned you doing a show about old video games too.
Yep.
What's the name of that?
That's called State Champs Esports.
Okay.
And it's really more about high school esports competitions. So we'll live stream or we'll pull highlights from other. But I try to shoehorn in some old retro stuff, you know, just for variety.
Okay.
And so over you know, the past year, I started collecting all those mini consoles. So I picked up a Commodore 64. I picked up a old Atari flashback. And what's nice is they have the HDMI output, and you know, it's all nice and, you know, clean and easy, just plug and play. So I was trying to get the Nintendo, the original NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, and you can't find them anywhere. At least not new. They're all, you know, $200 now resale. But you can find the Famicom, which is essentially that's the original Nintendo, at least the version that was sold in Japan.
Oh, wow.
And so that is an import, which actually sells for cheaper than, you know, these second market NESs. So it's got pretty much all the same games as the original Nintendo. They're in Japanese. So as long as there's not a lot of reading to be done, which luckily most of the games don't require a lot of reading. But so that is kind of like my, you know, the Simpsons watches is my most recent purchase. And over the past year, this has probably been my one of my most favorite purchases. So.
All right. Excellent. You nailed it. You
good.
Nailed what you got.
And I did bring a comic book, my favorite, most prized possession comic book. But
we'll get to
we'll save that for Brad.
Okay. So as you mentioned, I'm a big wrestling fan. I don't think it's been talked about much on the show. We touched on it a little bit, but so I actually have not just a collectible, but one of the actual wrestling stars of the late 80s. And it just happens to coincide with the man that created him, his A&E biography debuting tonight on A&E. None other than Mick Foley's own Mr. Sacco. And this is actually designed by Mick himself and signed here by Mick. This was like the first edition. He did this to like raise money for charity a couple years ago, and now he does them all the time. But I do have a certificate of authenticity somewhere for him if I ever do decide.
So he drove down the value of your sock with.
Well, I was a little disappointed when he started, but I think what he does is he does change up the faces just a little bit because they don't always all have beards and goatees, and he'll change it up a little bit. Sometimes he'll put some blood splashes.
So now is that did he make that himself, or is that like a screen print? Or
No, he actually created this with Sharpie.
Oh,
He
okay.
actually signed it and made it himself. That's what he does.
Wow.
So yeah. So anyway, Mr. Sacco, there he is, and there is what you got for this time. And without further ado, let's get to our special guest this week, and it is none other than Brad Richards from Brad's Comics and Collectibles. How are you today, Brad? Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks so much.
Now, I'm just going to start right out with kind of going way back. And I don't know if you would remember this or not, but what was your first comic book, if you remember? Well, let me ask you this. I assume that you collected comics as a kid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Do you remember what your first comic book was?
I can't tell you I remember the first one because I think I got a batch of them. I was about 5 years old, and it was going to, from what I remember, it was going to garage sales with my grandma, and we would go over into Whitehall, wake up at 5 in the morning, and we raced around. And
Okay.
begrudgingly, it was probably an Archie, which bummed me out.
Right.
No superheroes in Archie.
Right. Very few. So that was probably the first. But yeah, I started collecting when I was 5.
Oh, okay. So, well, I mean, you were probably a little bit too young at 5 to be able to like get them monthly to keep up with continuity, or
Yeah.
so was it just like a sporadic thing when you were younger, or were you able to actually go and kind of keep a series going?
So growing up in Lake Orion, there weren't any local shops. The closest thing that I had was like a Perry Drugs that occasionally we could ride our bikes to. But trying to get them in numeral order was just a bear. So we were trying to find them anywhere we could. We'd run down to Dixieland. We'd just hunt anywhere. And frankly, I was happy with whatever I got because it was so sporadic. It was even trading with friends and we didn't have access to a local shop.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how that was back then.
Right.
Like I don't know if you would have ever gone to Patterson's in Oxford, but I lived near there, and that's where I would go.
Yeah.
I knew I went to school with a kid, and his brother was like a huge comic book fan, and he worked at the store, so I'm pretty sure that he was in charge of bringing all those in. But even the same thing, even though I had access to that, pretty easy access to that, it's still, you're a kid, so you don't. I mean, it was like maybe I got a few. I remember. I mean, I was already probably in middle school, and the first series that I actually completed was the original Rocket Raccoon series. Not the original Rocket Raccoon series, but
Sure.
the 4-issue one that Marvel did at some point.
1983.
But, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, I was the same way. It was like I'd pick one up.
That was Patterson's. Was that an actual comic book store, or that was more
No.
like a department?
Drugstore.
It was actually a drugstore,
Oh,
but
okay.
but they just had like a good variety of
See,
of
I was
comics due to
spoiled.
him,
I grew
so.
up in Royal Oak,
Okay.
and we had Dave's Comics,
Oh.
which was maybe a mile or two from my house, so it was close
Right.
enough where I could ride my bike, and that was like
A regular
I was a
comic book
kid
store,
in a
right?
candy store. They had wall-to-wall comic books. The guy Dave was kind of, a little jerky, but
Was he like the Simpsons comic book guy?
No, he was, he thought he was much cooler and hipper, and I had a few run-ins with him, but his comics book selection was like a kid's dream. That was heaven. I spent hours and hours there every week.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was a kid, I mean, I wouldn't even have known where a normal store dedicated to comic books was located.
Well, for me, besides Dave's, like literally right down the block from me, we had a VFW hall. And
Okay.
so every couple of months, it seemed like they'd be doing comic book shows.
Oh, they did.
So
back
I
then.
would just
All right.
go in Sunday morning, pay my $2 or whatever it was,
Oh,
and I
okay.
would just hang out there all day long. It was
Oh, wow.
so between
All right.
Dave's and the VFW shows, man, I was in comic book heaven.
So Brad, you mentioned Archie, but I assume that maybe when you get a little bit older, that you got more into the superhero comics. And if you did, who were like some of your favorites?
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Okay,
You said
yeah,
getting into the superhero comics.
yeah. Who were some of your favorite titles back then?
My uncle came home from the service, and he gave me one of the best gifts ever, which was a trunk full of probably 300 tapes, and then probably 800 to 900 comics, and the overwhelming majority was Conan.
Oh,
And so I just went nuts on Conan.
okay,
um, I wanted to read everything, and it would, and so going back and thinking about how I was finding stuff, there was very few like once and done kind of comics, and Conan was one of those. Jonah Hex was another. Even some of the Tarzan books, you could read any issue in any order. It didn't matter. They kind of
oh,
wrapped
really?
them up.
Okay,
So those were good because yeah, I loved the Amazing Spider-Mans and Fantastic Fours and the Avengers and all of those standard books, but it always was so tough because you'd read it and then you get to that cliffhanger ending and you're like, what the
right.
hell? I'm never going to see this book again because I can't find it off the stand. And we would
Yeah.
we would break down occasionally and do the mail order lists and send away. But
Oh, okay.
if you remember those days, you had to list alternatives, and you never got what you wanted. You always got like the second or third choice.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
So very different
Yeah, I
times.
never sent
Yeah,
away for comic books
Yeah,
when I was
I
a
don't
kid.
think I ever did either. I mean,
yeah.
I was tempted. I looked at all that stuff. I wanted the X-ray goggles
Hmm.
too, or glasses.
Oh yeah. Brad, can I ask you do you remember
They,
what your
they don't work.
first
No.
book was that you like, actively read on a regular basis? Because I remember mine. I was an Iron Man guy where it was like that was
Okay.
my book. So Brad,
Hmm.
did you have like, maybe once you got older, one that you really pursued and followed?
Yeah, I still, so I'm deeply passionate about Conan. As I mentioned,
Oh,
I still get Conan today. Fantastic Four, um, the Silver Surfer stuff. I really like the cosmic stuff, but I'll even go into, if we're talking about growing up versus today. Growing up, there was so many cool things. The Jim Starlin stuff was amazing, and George Perez. And if we want to shift to today, I think overall, I'm going to buy Marvel just out of rote, just out of pattern. But for really mind blowing stuff and innovative, you can't beat Image. Hands down, they're blowing the doors off of what they're putting out. With all the different titles. Going way beyond Walking Dead and Spawn. They're really putting out some great stuff. Think about what Marvel and DC were doing back in the day of, okay, you had the superheroes, you had the horror, you had the war, you had, romance, you had all these different styles. And Marvel and DC pretty much have pigeonholed themselves into that superhero. They can't really go out of it. But Image, hands down, is covering all of those genres plus, even some really wild, trippy sci-fi stuff. I mean, it's just really, if you're looking for new stuff, that they're really going out there with artists and writers.
I have to admit, I'm kind of out of the game. Like, I mean, I have my list, and it's gotten smaller and smaller. Not because of me, but because they just they come to the end of the run or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, my monthly title list is super short right now, and I couldn't even tell you the last time, and I still buy them. But I mean, I used to peruse previews and pick out everything that I wanted for the month, and I mean, I couldn't even tell you honestly what Image is doing right now, or really any of the other ones. I mean, I'll still get the previews magazines and kind of skim through, but I've kind of, I mean, I've got a ton of comics. I need to go through and sort them out one day, but I just, I don't know. I guess I focused more on toys than comics recently. Well, I mean, not just recently, but in the last so many years. But But
Sure.
that's actually a good segue for a question that I wanted to ask you. I know that you go out and buy toy collections, and we'll get into the selling aspect of it later. Uh, but what was your favorite toy line as a kid?
I'd have to say Star Wars. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
asking a
Me too.
drummer who's their favorite drummer. If I didn't say Neil Peart, you'd be in trouble. It had to be Star Wars, and maybe a very close second was GI Joe.
Yeah.
We
Same
Also
just
with
me
we
same,
just
too.
had
same with me.
we had we had mountains of them.
Yeah.
But to look backwards, like we went to we used to love KB Toys because you'd find like a lot of discount figures, and
Yeah.
just by accident we kind of discovered all the Dungeons and Dragons figures, and I mean we ate those alive. At that point when they're closed out, all you could find were the dwarves and the elves, not the cool monsters. But
Yeah.
you got to say Star Wars.
Yeah. We agree. We agree.
Great minds think alike.
Star Wars probably number one, GI Joe number two. But I mean, I was like a crazy GI Joe fan. I mean, once I
Yeah.
was done with Star Wars, but it's weird though. Like I don't feel. I mean, I'll buy them, but I just don't have the nostalgic feeling that I do with that I do with Star Wars for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, you
But
know what I've been seeing in the stores lately are all the Masters of the Universe. I was a
yeah,
big He-Man fan, so I've been loving seeing those again. I've been close a couple of times to picking some things up, but
I've
I'm
picked
like,
a couple. I've picked a couple up. I actually picked up a She-Ra the other day
okay.
because it was unpunched, and I picked up a Orko because he
Oh,
was
okay.
unpunched. Two figures that I would never touch when I was a kid, but times have changed.
Well, I saw Battle Cat, and I was like, ooh, it was so tempting.
Yeah, I was hoping they'd drop the price a little on Battle Cat. $20 is a lot more palatable for Battle Cat than 25 to me. So I'm kind of I'm kind of
There's
waiting
that
for it.
$5 buffer
It
there.
is. I don't know why, but so Brad, did you continue to collect then all the way through high school? I mean, you started at age 5 and just continued till now.
No, I did have a gap. So I worked for Mike till I was 25 when I graduated, and went to work full time. But there was gaps where I always enjoyed it, but I had to kind of shift my focus. And from like 93 to probably 98, 99, I really had slowed down in comics. I just didn't have the time. I didn't want to pour the funds into it. I was going full time with the band as well. And so we were really shifting dollars. But, I was still interested the entire time. I would walk through we'd go shopping and I'd walk through the aisles just to see what's going on. And I would always pop in and see Mike, and any other shops that I was traveling by, just to keep my finger on the pulse because I love it. I mean, it's so much fun.
Yeah. So that's when I met you. When I started going to Mike's store or Primetime Comics and Cards in
Yeah.
Lake Orion. If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, so you were in high school then when you were working for Mike.
I will have to double check, but I think I started there when I was 13.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's
I
like
didn't realize
prime
that.
age for a comic book reader. That's perfect.
It was an unbelievable assignment. It was, you talk about major life lessons that, I came in, Mike was well over 95% sports cards at that time, and had a few little like Marvel sample packs that they had put out at the time. They give you that little green short box and the red longer box, and you get a random assortment of comics. And I kept coming in and I'm buying these over and over again from him. And he's like, well, you really like comics. And at that time, Diamond was soliciting him to do this. And we started talking more and more. And he said, how would you like to work for me? Because I know nothing about comics. I don't want to do this. I want somebody that's passionate about it. And so I started working for him. And it was amazing because it started off with, okay, you've got $300, $400, $500 a month to order for product, and the numbers kept going up and up and up. And so I'm like picking,
Hmm.
what should come into the shop. And I learned some valuable lessons really quickly. What I like doesn't matter. It's
It
it's
doesn't
what
always
is selling.
translate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd get really fired up about a title, and we'd have 5 of them left sitting there, and and then I'd have to sit there and look at them, and then there was other times where it was fun, because he would say, you ordered that and I thought that was going to be terrible, and you proved me wrong. Just keep doing what you're doing. And as a kid, that definitely helped spur my entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. If Mike brought you in specifically for your comic book knowledge, because at the time, I remember going back to previews. That's what I would do, because he didn't really have a lot of issues there. It was mostly sports cards. So, excuse me. So I would have to go through the previews magazine and pick out every comic that I wanted. And then later on, I don't know if he had the deal or if I just didn't want to do it at the time. I think it was much later that where he just had the pull list, the pull boxes for you. So which is what I still have today there.
Yeah.
So how long did you work there?
I think it was 12 years total.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I still he recruits me at least annually for Free Comic Book Day.
I was gonna say, I know that you've come back a couple times.
Yeah.
I think I had to fill in for you one year. But
I think I've only missed one.
I think I filled in that year, but yeah, that was those are fun. So I'm glad that that's coming back, even though it got pushed back to what, August this year?
August. Yep.
Okay.
Well, at least it's back. So that's the good thing.
Yeah, exactly. So when did you decide to start selling your comic books?
I never really was selling mine. So what happened is, as I would talk to people, I would throw the geek card down, when it was appropriate, and people just started saying, hey, my brother's got a collection, or my uncle's got a collection, or I saw a big pile at the garage sale. Do you want to go and check this out? And just me starting to look at it, and okay, if I'm paying 50 cents $1 a piece, well, shit, how much for the whole box? And then I would just buy everything in quantity. And, that's where I'm like, well, I'm just going to sell off what I don't like, or maybe I've read them and I don't care for them, and I'll just keep kind of purging it out. And so that happened. It was probably, when I started seriously buying collections, that was probably, I would say 99, 2000, somewhere around there. And it happened like onesie twosie, a few hundred, then it was a few thousand. And then it just kind of took off. That's where it led me to shows. And, I started dabbling around on eBay back in '98. And it's grown into just something crazy now. God bless.
Yeah, right.
Brad, since you mentioned that you don't really sell your books, I'm assuming you still have all those comics that your uncle gave you way back when?
I do.
Oh, okay, good. Because I always ask comic book collectors, do you have your original collection? I kept my comic book collection, but like my action figures, they're all gone. So I've got a lot of friends that, they're very protective of their original comic books from when they were a kid. So that's why I just was wondering.
Well, let me tell you a little story about what happened to my original comics. And I've got, I think some survived, but I had like a big pile, and I would carry the
like
whole
a long box worth, or
probably, but it was before.
Yeah,
it was before I knew that those even existed. So it was some big ice storm that we had in the 70s. I don't remember what year it was, but our power was out, I want to say. So we were using. Oh no, So I think we were using like oil lamps. And I had my whole collection stacked up, sitting next to one of these oil lamps. I mean, it wasn't turned on, but for whatever reason, I ran and did like a flip into the chair knocked the lamp over onto my comics, which I would have salvaged them, but next thing I know, I'm like, "Where's my comics?" You know, because they just got covered with oil, and my dad just had thrown them all out.
Oh,
So,
Lord.
not that I mean, I don't even know if I had anything valuable or not, but
Well, it's
just
more sentimental.
nostalgia-wise,
Yeah.
yeah.
At first, I thought you were going to say they caught on fire.
When I start to tell that story, that I always have to say that it was not lit because that's where everybody thinks it's going, and
Right.
and then it would be anticlimactic. So you mentioned doing the shows. I know that the shows are like bigger now, but so about what year did you start doing the comic book shows?
I think it was about 2001 that I started.
Okay.
And it crunching those numbers, you know, what it costs to get a table, you know, versus what it costs today. Like I didn't think I was worried I wasn't even going to make money. And I can say that every show that I've ever done, I've always made money. One was damn close though, like way too close. Like I'm never coming back here. But you know, you start to get into, you know, there's some of the national shows that I've done that, you know, you're talking, you know, it's 1,100, 1,500 for a 10 by 10 spot. So it gets very, very scary that, you know, to be in this room and set up. Yes, you've got a lot of people that are coming in, you know, historically, we're going to see what happens post COVID. But you know, that's a lot to think about, especially when you're selling 50-cent dollar comics. Granted, I'm selling expensive stuff as well, but you kind of have to cover all bases. But yeah, I've been doing shows. It's got to be over 20 years now.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
That's a long
that
time.
you've been doing it that long. What is the most valuable comic that you either own or have sold in the past, would you say?
Well, I sold a Spidey #1 just recently. That went for $7,000. You know, there's a lot of them. You know, I owned a Amazing Fantasy 15, amazingly enough, for 45 minutes. When I bought it, I was at a show, and somebody saw it behind me, and I didn't want to sell it. I gave them the I don't want to sell it price, and it sold.
Wow.
You know, so it's some of these things can be very transactional when you get into that holy grail land of those major keys, because they're extremely sought after. You know, especially for collectors that are working down their list, naturally those are the last ones that are left behind. You know, that they're hunting for.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, right around there. You know, when it starts to get north of $10,000, you know, in a lot of cases, that's where I'll use an outside service like a Comic Link or Heritage or somebody like that they can facilitate it, because doing a lot of that through the mail is it's a lot of stress. I'll let them deal with it.
Yeah. Now, do you get into the grading aspect of it, or so you do have the graded comics also?
Absolutely, yeah. I work with both CGC and CBCS.
Okay.
I'm sending off hundreds of books a year.
Oh.
You know, but you've got to be very, very careful, you know, what you send off, because, you know, are you going to get a financial return when you're putting anywhere from, let's say, 35 to, you know, a couple of hundred, depending upon what book it is and what the value and the year that it was produced.
Mhm.
That I have seen many people that do grade because, you know, maybe it is something special to them. And if they want that graded because they feel better, because they like it, amen. But if you look at it specifically from a financial standpoint, there are many cases that I run into that individuals have gotten books graded that they've actually lost money on.
Really?
You know, yeah, absolutely. They don't get the bounce. They think just because this is graded, you know, it is, #1, is the book sought after? Is it rare? Is there something specific to it? You know, first appearance or a death or you know, an intro to a storyline, or the movie rights have just dropped, or whatever that is. There's some wild things that you see graded, and CGC or CBCS is not going to turn them away, because they're receiving that grading fee.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. They'll grade anything you want.
Let me ask you this. I'm kind of going off into a different direction here, but and I wasn't planning on asking you this, but you just made me think of something. During the Death of Superman arc, I had so many people that were buying all those because they thought they were going to be able to send their kids to college and all this stuff. And I tried to tell them that no, because everybody has the same thought as you. Everybody's going out to buy them. And for years and years and years at the comic book stores, there'd still be stacks of them. Have those finally started to go up in value? Do you know?
Well, a friend told me that the white bagged one he's getting around $3 a piece for. And I said, I don't care. You can have every one of mine for 50 cents a piece and take them away. It's that bad. Wow. Every collection that I buy, you're going to find typically that white bag Superman. You're going to find a lot of the Image #1s, hopefully Spawn one, because that book has started to get some traction. That used to be a $20 book like all day long. The Death of Superman book has still kind of retained value. It's $20 to $25 as long as it's not marked up. Okay. But, it is such a sad story. I talk to so many people and they'll say, oh my God, I've got a mountain of comics, Brad. And I've got the full set of the Death of Superman. I'm like, right. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, I think I was just going through my comics yesterday and to pull this one out that I brought. And I came across a bunch of, I think, what are they, New Universe comic books?
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, oh, my God, my ships come in. I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to buy all these #1s and the full, 10 issues or what. And I don't even know if most of those even made it to 10 issues. I mean,
what is the New Universe? I'm not sure.
Well, it was Marvel wanted to create a new, separate from the Marvel universe, a new series of characters and comics that they could create and write. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh my God, these are so lame. Even at the time, I remember thinking, So that's what made me think of it when you were talking about the.
Let's see what you brought.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
And
this is not what I think is maybe even my most expensive comic book necessarily, but it's, I think, sentimental value. It's my Iron Man #1.
Oh, wow.
And it was what I would consider the first expensive comic book I ever bought as a kid.
Okay.
And again, when I say expensive, that's relative terms. I was 11 or 12 when I picked that up, mid 80s. And, I think I paid like $50.
Okay.
And I don't even know if it's like the condition, if it would be considered good. I've kind of been afraid to have anybody look at it just because I don't, in my mind, it's like a mint perfect, beautiful book. Yeah. And I'm never going to sell it anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But, at the time, for me, a $5, $10 comic book, it was like a major investment.
Oh, yeah.
So for me to spend $50 on a comic book, I mean, that was a lot of, lawn mowing that I had to do to, save up for this one. So, so sentimental value, I think this is my most, important book. I've got some others, like I too had an uncle that gifted me a whole ton of collection with a bunch of Conans and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. That must have been the thing. And so I'm sure a lot of those probably have more value than this, but because it, like I said, it was my first expensive book,
Brad, with let's say roughly it's in very fine condition. Off the top of your head, what do you think that could go for about now?
Boy, that's on the spot.
Just tell me it's worth more than $50.
He's made. I mean, he would make more than that now, right?
You did just fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you're probably talking, and I'm going to tell you here in a second because I was looking something else up before we started. So if it's around an 8, if you were to get it graded and it hits an 8, you're talking about $2,000.
Oh,
okay.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean that is probably even with the gift of your uncle, that's a 1968 book. That's a solid book. Now to be fair, that dark blue cover is extremely tough. Like when you start getting into the 8s and the 8.5s, it's hard to get. So,
Mm.
you know, I would just be cautious and look at some other graded copies for like proper expectation, but you're not going to sell it. Enjoy it.
No,
You know,
no.
whether you grade it or not, that doesn't even matter.
Right.
Um,
Like I said, to me, it's mint in my mind.
Well, yeah.
Because
Right.
I'm never
Yeah.
selling it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's really all that matters at the end of the day, right?
absolutely.
So,
right.
uh, Brad, what is there like a holy grail comic or collectible out there that you've never been able to obtain for whatever reason?
I'm more of a Marvel guy, so I'll preface it with that.
Okay.
I've been able to acquire almost, I would say, every Marvel key. Um, Unless you start going into the 50s, like some of that pre-Marvel stuff of the Captain Americas is extremely tough to find in any type of condition. Now, if we were talking overall, you know, DC started earlier. Those books are so hard to find. You know, it's hard because I am a collector, and that is why I still do this. It helps fund the hobby for me, so I can purchase things. So if we go outside of comics, you know, what I'm personally looking for, I love a lot of different things, but I've started buying a lot of original comic art along with original comic cells. So I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I've picked up and been lucky enough to pick up both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, the 70s cartoon cells. That stuff
Oh, wow.
is super hard to find. They threw most of it away. And I think that is going to be the next wave. You know, what we've seen with collectibles, they're one of a kind. And to be able to get a Gollum or, you know, whatever favorite character you have, I think that's going to be that next piece, because it's starting to be recognized by some major auction houses as art, you know, instead of just cartoony stuff. So,
Okay.
I mean, you could go all over the map with me. I can get excited about almost nothing.
So something I don't know how. I don't know if it just popped up on Facebook because of the other stuff that I collect, but I have been eyeballing some of those myself. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it, so I haven't pulled the trigger on anything yet. But I have seen a lot of those old I'm sorry, cartoon cells
Yeah.
from a lot of those old and some of the old TV shows.
Just
too.
out of curiosity, what are those? I mean, I know it probably varies wildly, but like, what can you pick up pricing wise? These cells, what are they going for?
Some of them aren't too bad. You'd be shocked, you know. Now, when you get into like a major movie, like a Walt Disney movie or Lord of the Rings, or you know, a well done movie, you're talking a minimum couple of $100. But it all comes down to who's on sale, how big are they, you know, what are they doing. It's very subjective. But when you get to the cartoons, even I've picked up some like Toucan Sam, you know, from the commercials of the animation, and some of it can be pretty inexpensive, especially if you buy it as a group. So I picked up a nice lot of Star Wars Ewok and droid cells. And
That'd be cool.
That's what I was looking
Ends-
at.
ends up coming out
and
to-
they were pretty inexpensive, the ones I was looking at.
yeah, for now,
Yeah.
I think that those are going to get snapped up.
Okay. Now something else that has gone up recently. Well, I mean, comics I think have gone up recently too, but definitely cards, like Marvel cards and stuff like that. I mean, I think all cards, but definitely Marvel cards have gone up. What is the reasoning for that?
The Marvel cards was a temporary glitch.
Oh, okay.
I think what happened with that is, you know, so you now have, if you lay this out, we get shut down. Everyone's stuck in their house. We're going backwards. We're sorting out our basements. We're going through stuff. We're grading cards. You know, the Michael Jordan documentary hits. Everyone starts sending off cards, and you're watching values just go through the roof. Pokemon follows track, and then everyone started to say, well, geez, this is Stan Lee's rookie card in the Marvel Universe Series 1 that came out in 1990, and they made millions and millions of those cards. So cards. So temporarily, you saw a spike that even ungraded, that card was selling within 1 week. Going from a couple of bucks to 75. It's gone right back down.
Okay.
So you see these corrections, and as collectors, you always have the fear of missing out, and
Yes.
I don't have that much anymore because I know it's just a matter of time that I'm going to find it. It might be a decade, but I'm going to find it, and I'm not going to have to pay through the nose. But if I really want it, I'll just pick it up to get that off the checklist. But in most cases, I just wait it out, and you do find it, and it makes the win a little bit sweeter. But we are seeing that bump not only with records, with video games, the vintage video games. I was talking to a friend 2 nights ago, and he's got a Sega Genesis system that he just got an offer of $25,000. Now he has
what?
He has a game that is specific to, it was a blockbuster release only, Crusader Ascenti, and that game by itself is selling for around 7 to 10 grand. And then if you grade that game, which they do now, it's a whole nother level, and it's making it very tough. And when those numbers go out, so when I'm buying collections, everyone assumes that everything they have is mint, and that it's worth a ton of money.
Yes.
And so then
I
you start
know,
going through
I know
everything.
all my stuff is mint and worth a lot of money.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I ask you just, you mentioned the video game grading. Is that including like the boxes and the instructions and all that? Is that what they are considering when they're grading those things?
They do it multiple ways. So you can send down sealed games. You can send down loose games. You could send down just the cartridge itself. So there's many, many different options. They do the same thing with figures. I've got some sealed Star Wars original, and they'll grade them in the package and put them within Lucite, or they'll do a standalone figure only. So there's many, many options.
Wow. Oh yeah, just like a comic book, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, even the comic, even CGC and CBCS, I don't think both of them are doing it, but at one point they were grading single comic book pages.
Oh my God.
So I didn't have so one of my friends, I caught up with him in Chicago, and he said, I'll never be lucky enough to have a Batman #1, but I have the last page of Batman #1, and now it's graded and it's got the Joker on it.
Really?
And he was like, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So it's a single page.
Wow.
I never heard of that before. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's, from an investment standpoint, that is absolutely worth it, because, he passes, his wife's going to see this single page and say, what the heck is this? Now that it's graded,
Oh, right.
That's worth a ton of money.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that. I'm going to fire a few quick questions at you, just for fun. In your opinion, what is the greatest comic book television series of all time?
Oh my God. I'm not even going to answer that.
Stumped him.
What? Denver, what do you think?
Well, are we talking, does it matter if it's animated or?
Well, no, yeah, it's live action. I should have wrote live action on it.
Okay, live action. Oh man, that's a toughie.
Does that change it for you, Brad, if I say live
Yeah,
action?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay.
I mean, I got to say, I don't know if it counts because it's not based on a comic proper. It's, it's comic book characters. But I got to say that Watchmen series on HBO was pretty amazing. I don't know if it's all time my favorite, but man, I loved it. I think it's incredible. So, but the problem is there's so many good ones out there right now. The Boys is incredible. Love that Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I mean, I could go on and on.
Brad, do you have an answer now or no?
Yeah. I would jump on the bandwagon with Watchmen, because that was mind blowing. The ending of that was so fantastic that's you lose a lot of that sci-fi goodness sometimes with like classic superhero, and so they tied that in. I still am like one of the few lone soldiers with Walking Dead still. I did enjoy that,
Mhm. Oh, I did
but
too.
I also recognize, with the movies and the shows, we go into this fierce debate of, where they hold the material, in reverence, and they change this and that. I'm okay with it as long as I get something to enjoy and we have a friendly debate about it.
Yeah.
If they need to make changes for whatever reason,
Mhm.
at least I get a movie or a
I
show.
I mean, I totally understand what The Walking Dead did because they didn't want it to. I mean, I understand them not wanting to follow the comic, to the T. So people like me who had read at the time, I was caught up, and
Yeah.
so
You
they were
still
able
want to
to
be surprised,
ex-
even though you've
right.
read the
They
books.
were able to throw some curveballs in
Yep.
there, like Dale, which upset me, but whatever.
But that's also what makes it memorable because it's
Yeah.
doing these things that you're not expecting, even
Right.
if it infuriates you to a certain degree, you're not going to forget about it,
Yeah. So, how about your favorite, or what do you consider the greatest comic book cartoon ever? Then, Brad, if you got an opinion.
I'm a sucker for those classic 60s Marvel. They
Yeah.
were so cheaply done, but they were cool. The theme music was fantastic.
Right.
Um,
And
I love
And it was
those.
kind of all we had, so
it
you
was.
you savored every little morsel, because to me, the only other thing at the time that I can remember is Super Friends, and that was always so goofy and silly.
Yes.
That the Marvel ones were, at least it felt like they were approximating the comic books.
Right.
Right.
And they left. I mean, those left an indelible mark because people still, like, people that you wouldn't think know, like younger kids, younger people still know those theme songs.
Right.
Well,
from-
and
from
just
those
that
original ones.
Spider-Man looking at himself meme alone shows its
Oh, yeah, right.
importance.
Okay, now one more. What is your favorite live action superhero film of all time, Brad?
Damn.
You know what? I lied to you. I told you I was not going to throw you any hardballs, but so I apologize.
Well, what's
But-
yours? Give him a chance to think about it.
Mine, man, Okay, so I'm a huge Deadpool fan. I have almost every normal series Deadpool. I have all his first appearances and stuff. So to me, I was so worried that they were going to botch his movies, and they didn't. They gave them. I thought for sure they'd water it down, and they didn't. I mean, actually, they amped it up a little bit, I think, because like some of those original comics were not as bad as a lot of the stuff that happened in the movies. So I would probably say Deadpool 1 and probably Iron Man 1 too, honestly, just because that kind of set off the whole.
Yeah, the importance of the historical value. For
Yeah,
sure.
and that movie was awesome. I mean, I saw that at the theater and I was just blown away. I was like, finally, they've nailed like a comic book film.
Brad,
I'll go with the Conan the Barbarian, since he's in the Marvel universe, the original Schwarzenegger. But I know I'm cheating there, so my
that's all right.
runner up would be Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one.
that's my runners up too.
Yeah, I loved that one also. Yeah, that would probably be.
Well, because it's merging
Number
like
3.
superheroes with Star Wars. Two of my favorite
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just that perfect recipe.
Right. And also, because I had completed the Rocket Raccoon thing, and I was proud of actually completing a series when I was in middle school. When I heard that they were going to do that and Rocket Raccoon was going to be in it, I was like, okay, how are they going to pull this off? And they did.
I was one of those people who had never even heard of Guardians of the Galaxy, so I think for me it was like a pleasant surprise,
Oh, yeah.
not knowing
Yeah.
what I was getting into,
Yeah.
Well, with me growing up and not being able to have access to a spinner rack, that was the kind of dregs that we were left with. So, we were reading about Deathlock and Guardians of the Galaxy and Werewolf by Night and Sergeant Rock and all this other stuff. We were dying for Spider-Man, but we started to learn that, man, there's some great stuff in here. So when that was announced, I was scratching my head.
Yeah.
But my God, was that fun?
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's all we're looking for.
Yeah. Now we should plug your site. Like you had mentioned selling on eBay, but you actually sell online. Is it just Brad's comics and collectibles, or is it on is it on Facebook?
On Facebook, I'm under Brad's Comics and Collectibles. Under eBay, my seller ID, you can search it by Brad's Comics and Collectibles, but my seller ID is Bradley WR, BRADLEY WR. And then I'm also on Amazon. I've been on Amazon for about 2 years now, and that's under Brad's Comics and Collectibles as well.
Okay.
And if people like my Facebook site, they'll see a post like a week ahead of any show that I'm going to. So if you're looking for things to do, I'm all over Michigan. Shows are really starting to ramp up. So I do post show information. That'll be a direct link to the show, so you can see like the admission and directions, etc. And then I will also showcase pictures of collections that I buy. I don't do it all the time. It's every couple of weeks, and it'll be like highlights of some of the really cool pieces that I've picked up.
What's your next upcoming show?
The following weekend is the Downriver Comic Con, and I believe that's right at their school. This is their 5th year, I believe. And they invited me down to participate. So we're excited to go down and see some friends that I know are traveling up from Ohio that I haven't seen in a long time. So it's been good to catch up with everybody.
So you will not be at the Lake Orion show then?
I will not.
I think that's the 4th, I want to say. I can't do that one either. The next one that I'm doing is the really cool Comic Con at the old IMA Arena. Whatever it's called, the Dort Federal. Are you going to do that one?
Possibly. I'm not sure just yet. Calendar, you'd be shocked to see like how much show news is going out. It's like every weekend is something. But there's a lot of them that I've already booked. Motor City, Astronomicon, the show up in Traverse City. There's tons of them that are happening. So,
do you have a favorite show? And hope that the other people don't see what you say?
The favorite show is whatever is next.
I would say that my favorite is the February Great Lake show. I think that, when you think about true classic Comic Cons, that feels more like that than anything. And Motor City is great. That's one of the biggest that I do. Mm-hmm. But when you can't walk in the middle of Saturday, down an aisle, it's not fun.
No. I stopped going years ago. Honestly.
I always tell everybody, go Great Lakes. That's my favorite in the Metro Detroit area anyway, by far.
All right.
I love that show. And then for typically Motor City happens, and then the weekend following is Traverse City. And I absolutely adore that show because it's so laid back and very nice people. You've got people that are coming down from Canada. So it's a different atmosphere. It's a lot of different faces. It's in a great resort. So I like a lot of shows for different reasons.
Okay. Now we're gonna have to wrap it up here in a minute or two. Is there anything else that you'd like to throw out there or plug real quick?
I'm always buying. Reach out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If anybody is watching and in the market to sell or buy, definitely check out Brad's Comics and Collectibles. And thank you so much for joining us, Brad. And we'll be seeing you sometime in the future. I know that. So
thanks, Brad.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take it easy. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thanks everybody for checking out Collection Reflection and. Go to the Collection Reflection Facebook page And that will keep you updated on our next show. So we will see everyone next time. Thank you.